You have a passion for podcasting, but life sometimes can be extremely demanding and you're struggling to find time for your podcast. And with all of those steps that people are talking about on the internet, on blog posts, on YouTube videos, it is a lot overwhelming and you are overwhelmed and you're not sure how you'll be able to find time for your podcast. If that is you, then this video is for you. Hello and welcome to TPU TV. This is Dilip. If you don't know me, I'm a blogger, podcaster, and affiliate marketer. And this is a channel where I share a lot of simple, practical, and implementable podcasting tips so that you can get started with your own podcast. And if you're new to podcasting, then you might want to join my free course on how to start a podcast, which is there at thepodcastinguniversity.com/free-guide. You'll be able to find a link in the description box below. Go ahead, sign up for the course, and get started with your own podcast in less than 10 days. Now, on to today's video, which is about tackling a very important challenge that a lot of podcasters face, which is how to find time to podcast. Now, I get asked this question quite a lot in my discovery calls, and I'm sure that this is a question that a lot of beginner podcasters might have, or even if you are somebody who just started off with your podcast and you're struggling to maintain that consistency and create content on a regular basis, this is probably a problem that you too are trying to address. So in today's video, I'm going to share some very simple strategies that you can put to use and find time to podcast. So let's get started. Number one is to set your priorities right. Now, the art of setting priorities is probably the most important thing in any form of content creation. You might want to identify your podcast as your top priority. For me, my podcast is one of the top two priorities. And when there is something that is so important for me, when there is something that is there in the top two priorities, then I ensure that I will find time to do that. So it is important that you recognize the importance of your podcast, and that will help you naturally find ways to fit your podcast into your schedule. Now, this could mean setting aside some time each week to work on your podcast, even if it is a few minutes, or maybe setting aside blocks of time, maybe a couple of hours every week. It entirely depends upon how your schedule looks, but you will find some time on your calendar to work on your podcast. And a simple tip that I would like to give you is to use the Eisenhower matrix. Now, you can go and Google it to see what exactly Eisenhower matrix is. Now, that is a simple matrix that categorizes work on 4 different quadrants, which is basically urgent and important, then not so urgent but important, then urgent but not important, and something that is not urgent and not important. So you can use this matrix to put all of the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis into each of these quadrants, and accordingly prioritize the things that are on the top of your priority list. And your podcast, if it is not there in the top 2 priorities, then it is very difficult that you will be able to find time for that. So ensure that you are prioritizing your activities and you are giving your podcast that importance that it requires. Number 2 is time management techniques. Now, this is a fundamental block of any creator. And if you're not able to manage your time, then it is going to be very difficult for you to find time for your podcast and all of the other promotional activities that you will have to do for your podcast. You might want to follow some very simple techniques like that of maybe the Pomodoro technique or the time blocking method. These can be game changers if you are able to implement that into your schedule and use that to work on your podcast. So use one of these techniques and I'm sure you'll be able to find time for your podcast. Now, the Pomodoro technique is a pretty simple technique which basically involves working in focused intervals like that of 25 minutes and then taking a break maybe of about 5 to 10 minutes. That basically helps you get over fatigue and also ensures that you're blocking out all distractions and working focused on your podcast. Now, the time blocking method is also pretty similar, but there what you do is you block certain blocks of time on your calendar, which you will then use to work on whatever it is that you're working on, for example, your podcast. So you can use one of these techniques to manage your time and work on your podcast. And I'm sure you'll be able to find time for your podcast. Number 3 is batch recording. Now, batch recording is a podcaster's superhero secret. Now, I've discussed batch recording in detail in one of my earlier videos. I'll link that video here in the I button. you can go and watch that video. But batch recording can save you a lot of time and stress, because you will be able to record a set of episodes together, and then you will be able to maintain consistency in your podcast, and it will also ensure that you have no dearth of content. You will be able to publish an episode every week and maintain consistency. I in fact also recommend batch editing, because once you've recorded all of the episodes in batches, then go about editing them in batch. That way you'll be able to get a lot more done in a lot less time. It will help you streamline your workflow. It will help you streamline your entire podcasting process, and will also save a lot of time. But something that you might want to keep in mind is that you might want to plan and prepare all of the required outlines and scripts for your podcast in advance, so that you're not running here and there to find required information when you sit down to batch record or batch edit. Number 4 is to plan and schedule. The podcast planning and scheduling is an absolute non-negotiable. You might want to create a content calendar and put the topic of every episode that you're going to create onto that content calendar. Now what that will do is that will ensure that you have content ideas ready when you're sitting down to record or maybe write the script for that episode. If you don't do that, you will be running at the 11th hour to decide on what you want to do with your podcast. What is the episode that you want to release? Now the content calendar takes away all of that stress and gives you a nice look on what episode you want to record, and it will save you a lot of time that you will otherwise be wasting on trying to decide what you want to record. And I would also recommend using some scheduling tools, or you might also want to look for some podcast hosting platforms that let you schedule your podcast episodes, because that way what will happen is once you've batch recorded, you can go about batch editing the episodes and then batch produce it and schedule all of your episodes on the podcast host, and it is taken care of. So look for a podcast host who gives you that option of scheduling your podcast episodes ahead of time. Number 5 is to delegate tasks. Now, delegating is something that a lot of people refrain from, or a lot of people feel a little worry about, primarily because they don't know how to go about outsourcing or delegating tasks. Now, if your budget allows, I will recommend considering outsourcing some of the basic activities like that of editing, transcriptions, social media management, etc. You can outsource these to some professionals, but that's only if your budget allows. But if it doesn't, then something that I've seen working is to reach out to your friends or to your acquaintances or to somebody whose vision aligns with that of your podcast vision and ask for help. They might be able to help you with maybe editing or transcribing or even some aspect of scripting. So reach out to people. The worst thing that can happen is they'll say no, but there is nothing that you will lose if you reach out to them. So I would recommend reaching out to your friends and checking if they can help you with your podcast. This helps take out a lot of the overwhelm that is there in all of the podcasting process, and it will help you find a lot of time for yourself as well, and at the same time enjoy the process of podcasting. But the only thing that you might want to do when you're doing this is to ensure that you are setting the right expectations with them so that your podcast's quality doesn't get compromised. Number 6 is to utilize downtime like that of commutes. Now, this is something that is an extremely handy way to brainstorm. So what I usually do is when I'm not doing something and I'm outside or maybe I'm traveling, I use my notepad to jot down some of the ideas that I might have, or at times I also write an outline for podcast episodes that I'm planning to record. So you can use this downtime to jot down these outlines, create these scripts, which will ensure that your podcast recording and editing process is simpler and easier, and you're not spending a lot of time on these activities when you are at home ready to record your podcast. So use some of these downtimes that you get while you're commuting, or maybe you're sitting in a bus, or you're out there shopping with your family, or you're not doing anything. So use this downtime to do these kind of activities. Number 7, and the most important one, avoid burnout. Remember that your well-being is extremely important for the success of your podcast. So you need to ensure that you're avoiding burnout by taking irregular breaks or maintaining a work-life balance. You can schedule your breaks. For example, if you're batch recording and if you have almost 3 to 4 episodes to record, give yourself maybe a 15-minute break in between. Take care of yourself. Ensure that you're drinking water, staying hydrated. Whatever it is that you do, all of these small things, ensure that you're avoiding burnout and you're taking care of yourself. Because if you are not taking care of yourself, it can be extremely stressful and it can lead to a lot many other things, including diminishing returns from your podcasting experience. So don't do that. Ensure that you're avoiding burnout. Ensure that you're only doing as much as your body and your mind permits, and accordingly plan your schedules. That will help you a lot in terms of ensuring that you're enjoying the podcasting process. Number 8 is to bring guests onto your show. Now, a lot of times we struggle with finding topics for our podcast episode, and that is where guests can be extremely helpful. So when you bring in a guest, you are able to not only bring in a different perspective to your podcast, but also generate some content, because your guest is the one who is going to give you all of those content. All that you're doing is engaging in an interactive interview with them, and you get a lot of content, a lot of material from your guest. So if you're somebody who struggles to find content topics for your podcast episode, then you might want to consider interviews and look at bringing guests onto your show. And this can be an extremely handy way to get over creator's block if you are somebody who frequently faces a creator block. And another simple way that you will be able to find time to podcast is to bring somebody else who can manage your podcast. Maybe you can bring in a co-host or somebody who can manage the podcast when you're not there on the show. So talk to some of your friends whose vision aligns with that of your podcast vision, and check if they are okay to run the podcast along with you, and get them on your show. And at times when you don't feel like doing an episode, you can always bring them and they can run the show. So look at these different ways of bringing guests and new people onto your show. This will help ensure that you're able to find time for your podcast and for yourself as well. Number 9 is to use the right tools and resources. You might want to ensure that you're using the right tools and resources that helps you streamline the podcasting process or the podcasting workflow and save time. Now, wherever possible, I would recommend automating your process. I do a lot of this using macros on Audacity. I have created my specific macros which I use on Audacity, which helps me save a lot of time by eliminating those repetitive tasks that I would otherwise have to do. So you can look at how you want to automate your podcasting process, streamline the process. And if you're using Audacity, I would recommend looking at macros and automating some of those processes. Similarly, you can use a social media management tool that helps you basically schedule all of your podcast promos. That way you'll be able to save a lot of time and not sit down every week and write or create promotions for your podcast episode. I love Descript because it helps me simplify the entire workflow, takes out a lot of unnecessary time that I would otherwise be wasting on editing and creating the transcript and everything, because Descript does all of that in one go. I don't have to do all of that, and while I'm editing, my transcript is also getting ready. And now that Descript has merged or acquired Squadcast, now you'll get an all-in-one podcasting platform which will help you record, edit, get transcripts. You'll be able to get your promotional materials, everything at one place. So if you are somebody who is looking for a tool that helps you do all of these things, then I would recommend checking out Descript. You'll be able to find a link in the description below. Go ahead and check it out. It's an amazing tool that I recommend to everyone. And what I would recommend is, instead of spending money on many other things, invest in tools that helps you improve your efficiency. Invest in the right tools and resources. That's where you should ideally be spending your money. And the 10th and the last one, know that it is okay. That is right. A lot of times, a lot of beginner podcasters get so hung up on ensuring that they release an episode every week that sometimes when they are not able to do that, they feel very frustrated, they are stressed out, and there are a lot of people who've spoken to me about that. What you want to keep in mind is that while consistency is important, it should not be at the cost of your well-being. So sometimes it is okay to skip an episode. That doesn't impact your consistency. But only if you are determined to come back and release an episode the next week. It shouldn't happen that you skip releasing an episode this week and then you continuously skip releasing episodes in the subsequent weeks as well. Don't sacrifice your well-being just to stay consistent. First of all, I would say consistency is based on your comfortability. So decide your schedule based on how comfortable you are. It can be maybe releasing an episode every week or maybe releasing an episode every 2 weeks. So first of all, consistency has to be according to your schedule. Decide that schedule that you are comfortable with. And once you've decided and you're consistent with releasing your episode, if at times you feel like you're not able to do that or you're stuck with something, so it is okay to skip an episode and don't feel too stressed about what is happening. It is absolutely fine. So know that it is okay. It is okay sometimes to prioritize a bigger responsibility over your podcast. But all that you need to do is just ensure that you're determined to come back and continue with your podcast once you're over with that. So understand that finding time to podcast is not about squeezing it into your schedule. It is about finding a dedicated time block that you want to consciously spend on your episode. It is a testament of your dedication and creativity. So ensure that you are putting some thought into deciding how you want to do your podcast. And all of the strategies that I spoke about today, you might want to adapt those strategies depending upon your circumstances and your situation, and then use them in order to stay consistent and stay focused with your podcast. And for everything else, know that there is a podcasting community out there. You can join one of those communities. There will be a lot of people out there who will be able to support you. There is a WhatsApp group that I have where I help people who have questions, who have overwhelms, who have doubts. You might want to join that WhatsApp group. You will be able to find the link to that group in the description box below. Go ahead and join that WhatsApp group. It's again a community that will provide you a lot of support. Now, before I leave, something that I wanted to tell you is understand that it is about enjoying the journey. So embrace the journey, embrace the challenges, and most importantly, embrace your passion for podcasting. And if you're able to do that, then there is no reason why you will not be able to find time to podcast. So that's all that I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the information that I shared today. If you did, then do give this video a thumbs up, because that will help others find this video and it will help them in their podcasting journey. And if you're liking what I'm sharing on this channel, then don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell notification so that you stay updated with all of the latest episodes that I release. I'll be back again the next week with another interesting discussion around podcasting. Until then, keep watching TPU TV. This is goodbye from Dilip. You all have a good rest of the week.